Hey guys, BJTHEBRAVE here, back with another video for you, and today we've actually had the first official meta statistics dropped by Everguild themselves, Everguild being obviously the developer behind Warpforge, and I thought I'd just kind of like make a quick video, just kind of dive in and sort of explore these with you, and we could have a little look through them together and see what this is showing us. So let's jump right in. So first of all, obviously the competitive season is now over, and we've got some very pretty cards for people in the top 50. But below that, what they've basically shared with us is a whole load of statistics. First thing they've shared with us is some data at the faction level since the start of. Now, let me get this. It wasn't closed beta. It was. It was. I think it was early access, yeah. So since the start of early access. Now, I'm not sure exactly when that was. I think it might have been about mid-October when early access started. If someone wants to correct me, then just let me know in the comments. But basically, what we can see in this first table is some interesting things. It gives us a picture about the total number of games that have been played. So, for example, with the Orcs, 82,727 games involving the Goth Orcs. Now, I don't know whether that includes all modes. So does that include draft, practice? Does it include, or is it just purely constructed? So I'm not sure about that, but it does give us an indicator, of the total amount of games. It shows us which factions have been most popular. That being the Black Legion, actually, with 138,000 games, more games with Black Legion have been played than any other faction, followed by Ultramarines. It also shows us the overall win rate. And again, I don't know whether this includes draft or not, but what it does give us an indicator as is win rate, again, since early access, so that's through several patches, and also at all levels. So not just, the top of ladder, but, all levels and kind of mobile and PC and all of that good stuff. And overall, we can see that the win rates are closer when you look at the data like this, but the Orcs still come out slightly on top, followed by Necrons and then Eldar. So, further down what they shared with us, and this is perhaps more interesting, is that we start to break down the factions by Warlord. And that's interesting because, some of the Warlords come when you first start the game. So if you, for example, start with Orcs, you have access to Gruk Face Ripper. And I think that's reflected in the use rate. So the use rate for Gruk Face Ripper was 8.76%, whereas the use rate for Ghazghkull, who's actually a legendary card, so it's actually harder to access early on, only has a 4.46 use rate overall. Okay, we're going to break the data down in a minute and look at some other stuff, but in that overall sense, that kind of makes sense. So the warlords that people have access to are slightly more played, but also what we've got here is a table showing the win rate, and we can see here, perhaps to no one's surprise, that Ghazghkull, since the December patch, since he got the massive buff to his warlord ability, a huge win rate there, 69.6%, and I can well believe that. I know from tracking my own results, I had a 77% win rate with Ghazghkull last season, so which is absolutely absurd. So yeah, I'm not surprised that Ghazghkull's coming out on top. Interesting to see, Imatech over 60%, and Abaddon as well. Really big surprise perhaps, but you have to remember this is across the whole board, right? So 58.5%, but that could be happening in the kind of lower divisions, and again reflecting that popularity of Abaddon. What is curious is right at the bottom we've got sort of Tervigon with the lowest win rate, but also Uriel, Ventress and Harken Worldclaimer. Now Uriel and Harken are the Ultramarines and the Chaos starting warlords, and we saw that those are the two factions that are most played, but unfortunately they actually have the lowest win rate. So yeah, that might be showing you that that's kind of reflecting kind of beginner win rates, for example. That could be one of the things you could read into that. What I'm really excited about, though, is that they actually are breaking this data down a little bit for us, and they've shared for us the legendary division. So, they're saying that in the legendary division, and then obviously it's very noticeable that Ghazghkull is really reigning dominant. And what you can see here is that as well as Ghazghkull in first, you've got Gruk Face Ripper in second. This is about games played purely in the Legendary Division. And what we can assume from the Legendary Division is that people have developed their collections. So they've either got all the really good cards in the game, or they've at least got that for one faction. So people who, like my friend, for example, who got into the game about a month ago, he specialised in Orcs, and all he's done is played Gruk Face Ripper. You know, it's all he's played. So he'll have a pretty good Orc collection now, but he won't have many cards from the other factions. So yeah, so you know, Orcs absolutely killing it, right? Top two factions when it comes to win rates. But again, we can see that suddenly in the use rate now, all of a sudden, we're seeing Ghazghkull absolutely the most dominant in terms of play rate as well. And that's because, you know, in the Legendary Division, people have developed their collection. They have got the Ghazghkull card, and they are playing that because it's the top meta deck. And so at the highest level of the game, you start to see, you know, somewhat more meaningful data. What else is this telling us? Well, Orican actually comes in third with 52.3%. And for those who aren't aware, I think that's because the Orican deck mainly is the leader for the Scarab builds, and the Scarabs happen to be the kind of prey deck on the Orcs. So if you just want to beat up Orcs, then running the Scarab Orican builds is a good way to go. And I think that's what that's reflecting in the Legendary Division. It's people who are wanting to prey on the meta. Have run Orican successfully. And then underneath that, we've got Galen. Now, I know from my own Ghazghkull data that the main deck I was losing to was Galen. I still had a positive win rate against Galen with Ghazghkull, but I definitely would say Galen took more wins off my Ghazghkull than any other Warlord. And that's kind of... so to me, no surprise that Galen's actually showing up quite high here, 52.8% win rate, and also much higher play rate than Orican and Gruk. So we were seeing it a lot, and it was performing pretty well at the legendary level. Similar story with Imatech, really, both in terms of use rate and win rate. You know, the very top players will be obviously getting a higher win rate than 52%. But, you know, it just shows that even in the Legendary Division, that Imatech and Galen could hold their own, and you could probably climb with those two. It would be a slower climb, obviously, than doing it with Ghazghkull, but it just shows that they were successful. Next up, we've got the Swarmlord. Now, Swarmlord's got 50.8%, but, you know, we've talked a little bit about Shimatsu before, and you've probably seen my video with him where he did a masterclass with me. Great video. Go and watch that if you've not watched it. I'll leave a link in the description. But basically... the Swarlord stats in the Legendary Division, I wonder what they would be if you took Shimatsu's games out, because he played so many games. He may well have accounted for quite a lot of this. But that said, it does go to show that, you know, Swarmlord played well, could compete as well. And then a little bit of a surprise in seeing Zephyr coming in next at 48%. I know some top players were starting to tinker with Zephyr a bit towards the end of the season, and that might be a little bit of a untapped potential deck to explore in the next season. But underneath that, we can see that all of the win rates suddenly drop off, and they're all under 50%. So of the 18 Warlords, only 6 of them actually sported a positive win rate. And that kind of gives you an indicator as to why Everguild are probably wanting to make, you know, the changes that they are in terms of the balance patch, and wanting to try and buff unsuccessful Warlords, because there's quite a big gap, right, between the successful ones and the not so successful ones. You know, if we jump to the bottom here, we can see that, you know, Harken Worldclaimer, who is going to receive a buff, you know, that's the starting Chaos Warlord, and actually has an abysmal win rate, and also things like Zandrek, Nemesis and Harken are quite underplayed. Same with Sylar as well. They're not actually really well represented in the top at Legendary, but their win rate when they are is really, really poor. So yeah, so some definitely a lot to do to balance the Warlords, particularly if we want to start seeing them being played kind of in the Legendary Division. So yeah, a couple of nice insights in there. Really great that they published this data. I hope we get more of this. It'd be good to see a little bit more about like player base and things like that. But yeah, I hope that was helpful. That was fun to sort of walk through together. Thought it'd be good just to have a discussion. If you liked it, please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.